right, hello everyone, and welcome back to my comfy corner. For those of you who are new, this is my comfy corner where I talk about things that make me comfy and cozy so I can stop bothering the people around me. And today, finally, this has been a long time coming. I am going to be talking about Masters of Death. Masters of Death is actually one of many book of the months that Barnes and Noble does. Actually, I think, yeah, monthly pick. The sticker's still on this one. And if you guys have not been knowing, or if I haven't talked about in my previous videos, which I'm pretty sure I have been reading the books of the months for Barnes and Noble. And it has been a great way to get me back into reading. Actually, Myrtle, which was one of my first book videos, so go check it out if you want to, was one of the first books that I picked up. And not only is there like 4 volumes, this is volume 2. I already finished volumes 2, 3. They had a bonus volume, and then now there's a board game that me and my boyfriend still need to play. But their book of the months, like their monthly picks, have yet to miss. And so today I thought that I should finally talk about Masters of Death, because I've been saying to my friends and family members that I'm going to make a video about Masters of Death. And I just haven't gotten around to it for different reasons, girlies. Don't ask questions. And literally, as I was about to record, my friends and my sister called me. And when I told them I was making the video, they told me to hang up to make this video. So it's happening. You're welcome. So with all that being said, a few housekeeping rules. If the lighting changes, girly, this is not a production studio. This is not TMZ. This is not ABC. This isn't 123. Okay, I'm doing my best. I think at night is probably better to record, but when it hits nighttime, I just want to relax and cuddle and snuggle. Okay, so I will try. But if you see the light shifting and changing, that's the lighting in this room. I'm doing my best. Also, yes, this is an official TXT Puputo, I know I'm pronouncing their character name wrong, but character plushie. This is actually Yeonjun's, and I'm gonna be like swapping as the time goes on. I have 3 out of the 5. So with all of that being said, I am going to be spoiling a lot about this book. So if you don't want to be spoiled and you just want an overture, I'm actually going to do a segment that is going to be spoiler free, where I just talk about the overture of the book, and then you can determine whether or not you want to keep going as I go through the entire book and we can kiki and laugh about it, because this book is amazing. So with all of that being said, let's get into the spoiler free overture, and hopefully future Tiana does not actually spoil anything in the spoil-free overture. Okay, so Masters of Death is a book that I'm holding physically. There's actually 2 different versions. There's the standard one, which is the book of the month, but then I guess after it popped off, there's a collector's edition that low-key I want, but like I already have this book and I already bought some more of her things. But anyway, it's made by Olivia Blake. Shout out to you. You did that. You're awesome. You're amazing. And basically what this book is about, it is about, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop laughing. This is actually a very funny book as well. As I go through it, and if you see, I have like 1,000,000,001 highlights. In the beginning of this book, I was just like, this is so stinking funny. I'm just gonna highlight every time something has made me laugh or chuckle. So anyways, back to the description, Tiana, focus. So Masters of Death by Olivia Blake is about a vampire. Her name is Viola, or V. Is about V. She is a realtor, but she's also a vampire. And she is trying to sell a haunted house that is possessed by Thomas Edward Parker IV. Make sure you say it right. Thomas Edward Parker IV. And she's just trying to sell this house, but Thomas Edward Parker IV is haunting the house, and so she's not able to sell the house. And so all of this story unravels because she wants to sell this house. And chaos ensues, and characters are introduced. Now, if that doesn't sound interesting to you, and if that doesn't sound comical to you, I want you to know, again, without exaggeration, look at all of these, I wanted, like, look at these highlights. And I had to use different highlighters because I started running out, okay? Comical. hilarious. This is so good. There is some romance to it, and I've been really trying to shy away from romance, but the Book of the Months keep bringing me back every time. This doesn't really focus too much on romance in terms of like that's all it's about, but there are some romantic beats that progress the story, which I personally love. And one thing that I love about Olivia Blake, one thing that I love about this girl, okay, she did this, is that her writing style for this book, and I have her other books that I still need to read because I'm still reading my backlog of books, but the writing style in this isn't like, here's the world and here's the main character and you only follow this main character and like maybe another character as you go and progress through, and you live vicariously through this main character as you read through it, right? She does not do this. Olivia Blake, what she does with this book is she introduces you to a character each chapter, and you get to read through like what the character's going through in each chapter through that character. So we start off actually with Death, because Death is also involved in this. I'm not going to say how and why because I'll be spoiling, but you start off with Death, and then you progressively go down the list of characters that you introduce. You go through V, you go through Thomas Edward, and you go through some other colorful characters. And essentially, on top of being funny, because you're reading from these people's perspectives, and it feels like they're talking to you about the situation that they're actively going through, or you're like a fly on the wall, but you're seeing it from that character's perspective. But also, it's like, I want to know why I'm seeing this character. What does it have to do with the story? And it just keeps you hooked. And if you ever feel like there's a point in time where like, why am I reading about this character? Why am I seeing this person's perspective? Or what does this have to do with anything? Trust and believe it's done purposefully. It's not done on accident. It's done because there's going to be a plot twist. And girlies, if you continue for the rest of this video, which is probably going to be a long one, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. It's so stinking good. So with all of that being said, if my little free advertisement, you're welcome, girly, you could slide the check later. If my little advertisement in my spoiler-free section has not convinced you to pick up this book, or at least stay for me to explain later in this video what happens in this book, please support this author. They are great. From this book alone, I've actually purchased their other books as well. It's in the closet, so if I feel up to showing it in the next parts, I'll probably show it. But please, 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 this is such a very fun book. And if after the end of whatever I talk about and say in the next parts, again, that will be spoilers, so spoiler alert from here on. One thing to note is that this was all because I decided to walk in Barnes & Noble one day and see Book of the Month. So I would suggest, if you don't end up reading this, to just go to your local Barnes & Noble if you have one nearby you, and check out a Book of the Month if you want to get into reading, because genuinely, Myrtle was the start of it, and then Masters of Death steamrolled me into it. And now I have this book, I have this book, I have this book. Like, these are so many authors and so many different stories that are being told. So truly, 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 if you want to get into reading, this is probably one of the best ways how. I am actually thinking about making a video just ranking and discussing overture of the books that I've read this year due to the Book of the Months. But yeah. So with all that being said, I'm going to go to the spoiler part of the video, which is the meat and potatoes of the video. So if you do not want to be spoiled, last warning, stop here. Leave a like and comment. Subscribe if you want to see more. But if not, let's get into the juicy details. Okay, so how I'm going to do this is I'm going to go through chapter by chapter, and if nothing interesting happens in a chapter, then I'm going to move on and just explain what you missed. But I also thought it would be fun to add quotes in that I highlighted. So each time I go chapter by chapter or B point by B point, I'm going to give you like one of the funnier lines that made me like do a little chortle or chuckle, but also explain the story. So with all that being said, let's get started with Masters of Death. So we begin with a prelude. Now, what I will say is the beginning can be a little bit confusing for those that, like I said, are used to a story coming in, introducing one singular or maybe a couple of characters, but you're generally speaking, a lot of the books that I have read and what I'm used to reading is you come in from one perspective, or if you're reading from another perspective, that character has already been introduced to you, right? And so you're seeing this world and interacting with these characters through this person's perspective. That does not happen here. So if you're used to that, this is going to be a little bit of an adjustment. And the beginning part may be a little confusing on is like, why are you bouncing from character to character? Or like, why is this important? But I promise you, girlies, it's going to be so juicy. Stick with me, camera. So we start off with the prelude. Personally, if you're not used to this sort of writing style, or if you're not used to like twists that won't pay off until you get to the very end, I would say skip this first prelude part. Again, if you're someone like me, because the prelude was a little bit confusing to me because it really doesn't pay off until like towards the end. And then when it pays off, it is so worth it. So again, take my advice with a grain of salt, but it starts with a prelude that sort of foreshadows what's going to happen in the future. And then when you come back, it's going to be like, oh, so I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to skip it. But we start with Death. So Death is a character in this. And so basically he starts off like he's the narrator in the beginning, where he's just like, yeah, I'm Death, and in this world that is not our world, this is like a unique world, obviously. He's just like, yeah, there's a story about my godson, and so everyone thinks that I got my godson because his parents were dying, and they were responsible parents because they were poor, and they just wanted to give their child to someone before they died, and then they ended up coming to me, and I just accepted the child. That's not what happened, girlies, okay? He was just like, let me tell you the real tea. What had happened was both of my godson's parents were stupid and poor, and for some strange reason they loved each other but really not their child, because I came to collect his father, and he died outside in the cold. But when he died outside in the cold, he had his baby with him. So I was just like, damn, this is not this baby's time. Let me go take this baby to his mother. Now, was I there to kill his mother? Yes. But I figured that maybe there would be some hints and clues to who I could drop this little baby off to. Turns out the mother and father were the only close of kin, or any kin, to this baby. And so Death, feeling sorry for this baby, decided to adopt him, and that's how he became his godson. Now, the godson's name is Fox, and Death actually named him Fox because, and I quote, why did I name him Fox? I'm slightly out of touch with popular culture, but I've always liked a good fairy tale, and out of all the things he might have been, like dutiful, attentive, or polite, or principled, or even the slightest bit of punctual, like an idiot, I merely wanted him to be clever. And that comes in later. Another thing that Death says about his godson, which again, he, like in the fairy tales, it basically is like, oh, he loves his godson, but really he like loves him, but he thinks that he's stupid. One of the fun things that made me laugh was that him describing his godson, fond as I am of him, he does chronically suffer from a touch of motherfucker. A general louchness or rakery, if you will. So I suppose I'll just have all of eternity to deal with it. And queen behavior from Death. And so, yeah, essentially we start off knowing like, okay, there's Death, and then there is Fox. So what is the point of the story? Well, as Masters of Death in the front, it shows that we get a prelude, if you will, or we get like a little intermission of what we're going to expect later when they become important characters. But basically, Fox ended up beating Death at a game, and in doing so, ended up basically getting immortality, but not getting immortality because he's immortal, and we'll learn about it next. So that is the beginning intro part. We now have Death, and we now have Fox, and after this, we're going to hear about Fox. Okay, so Fox, his full name is Fox Demora because he lives with the mortals. He's been around for about 2,000 years, okay, girlies? And the reason why he stays alive will become important later. Like, how is he immortal if how is he alive for so long if he's mortal? Well, obviously Death doesn't really want to take his godson because he grew attached to him, but there's another reason that comes later. And so we follow Fox. He's a spiritual medium in this place called Bucktown in Chicago, in this world, Chicago. And what he does is he has a ring that he uses to basically summon Death which his clients don't know. But he has this ring that he uses to summon death, and death can then speak to the spirits and ghosts and give him all the information that he uses. So Fox is essentially a con artist, right? Because he's conning these people into thinking that he could see spirits and ghosts when really it's his godfather that's doing it. And he uses this in a way to sort of get money from people, but to also basically smash people as well and mess with them. And so how we're introduced to him is this woman comes to him. She's a widow. I'm sorry, I'm just going through this. It's so funny. So she's a widow. She comes to Fox. Fox is cleanly dressed. Think of your like general dapper con man. She sits down and her husband just recently passed. And so she comes to him to see if he had any final words and to say whatever. And so he summons death to basically speak through her and to her about her husband. And death is like, oh, like, why am I being summoned? You're just here to smash this woman. She's not even that pretty. And Fox is like, do it. And Fox is just, and death is just like, well, first of all, he is not dead. He's not dead. He faked his death. Actually, he cheated on her numerous times, and he actually has a family outside of the marriage. And so Fox is just like, instead of telling this woman the truth, he's just like, oh, your husband loves you. He's so amazing. And basically lies to this woman. And tells the woman like, oh, your husband would have wanted you to move on with someone better, and like putting all the moves. And he eventually does smash her, which is like hilarious and crazy. Here's a fun quote. And when eventually Eva, what's her name, which is the woman that he does not remember her name. And when eventually Eva, what's her name's luxurious heartline and the rest of her palm closed virtuously around him, Fox closed his eyes with a sense of philanthropic satisfaction, reminding himself to give her a 10% discount for his services. Like, all of these characters are so unhinged. They're so unhinged. And so, yeah, that's essentially Fox. He is a con artist. He uses his ability to speak with death and uses death to speak with the spirits. He has a ring to do so, but again, people don't really know, and they assume that he could see the spirits. He cannot see that, and that also becomes important later. Okay, after meeting these two people, we are finally introduced to Viola, or Vi, or Vi, or however you want to pronounce her name. I might go back before V and Vi, but just know I'm talking about the same person. And so Vi, she is a vampire, and how we get introduced to her is that we find out that before she was turned into a vampire, she was a college student who was majoring in archaeology. She wanted to be an archaeologist, and so she was out on a venture at a dig site through her school. And while there, she was having a lot of fun. She was in the Philippines for this dig site, and so while she's at the Philippines digging around and everything, she ends up meeting this guy. Now, when she meets this guy, it was sort of like at a bar, and it was a dark setting or whatever, but she ends up, having a grand old time with this guy, ends up getting a drink. Next thing you know, she wakes up next to bed with him. Now, not only does she feel weird, but she has bite marks on her neck. And so when she wakes up, she's just like, what's going on? And then he wakes up and he's just like, good morning, wife. And he was like, why? What do you mean, wife? And he was like, yeah, I'm so lonely. I'm an immortal. I'm a vampire. And I turned you into a vampire so you could be my wife. And so one of my funny quotes from this chapter is the interaction where she's basically like, so after he says like, oh, you're my wife, I turned you into a vampire because I'm lonely, and now we're going to be together forever because I turned you into a vampire. Now you're going to suffer the same fate as me, so we'll be together. She says, oh, no thanks. He pursed his lips displeased. Yes, marriage. Then she said, why? And then he said, lonely, right? And why? She asked him, and he shrugged. Lonely, he told her. And though it was a normal enough reason for a normal enough institution, she still hadn't been fully obliged to comply. after striking him with a rock, instead of struggling to wrap the gash across her stomach, V had taken off. And honestly, queen behavior, because like truly, what would you do? Like, to flip it to you girlies, what would you do if you woke up and you were turned into a vampire and this crazy man was just like, you're gonna marry me? I probably would throw a rock too. Now, where did she find this rock? I don't know. I thought that they were inside a building, but like maybe she found a rock somewhere, or like they were having this conversation when they left out. But anywho's, she throws a rock at him, knocks him out. She runs out. And she realizes that like she has a hunger, and then also you find out that she's not a typical vampire, right? She's not the one that burns when she's out in the sun. This is a specific Philippine vampire. And so in their culture, in their type of vampire, they could go out in the sun, but at night they turn into a cat, and so they have feline features actually. So she's basically a cat vampire. She still has a lust for blood, human blood specifically, but like one of the things that she can't control herself with and turns into a beast, and like has all the super strengths and other things that you think of a traditional vampire or American vampire. But the one thing that she has to be careful about is unborn babies, which I thought was also very interesting, that that's a part of their culture in vampires, because there is a superstition that you're not allowed to have cats when you're pregnant because they steal the baby's soul. So that is still implied, that she senses when someone's pregnant or when there's a child or infant, because she craves specifically that type of blood, or their that sort of feeding. So she ends up meeting up with her professor and is unable to control her senses, and ends up accidentally eating and killing him. And so now V is on the run. She's no longer the girl that she used to know. And so she runs over to Chicago. She changes her identity. And then she decided, like, I can't, like, since I'm going to be immortal, right, I can't just live my life just killing people and moving around, because eventually it's going to catch up to me, and I don't want to like die in like a test tube essentially. So she decides to become, kid you not, she decides to become a realtor, because she's like, okay, I could show houses in the morning and the day, no one could call me at night, and I set my own hours, and then I'll figure it out from there. So she becomes a realtor, and then she ends up meeting Isis. Now, Isis is very integral, and we'll find out more about Isis later. But Isis ends up turning out to be a demon, and she's like, hey, I know that you're an undead, which is what they call people who can't really die or live for a long time. So it's like, I know you're an undead, and ooh, you're probably a vampire. Here, have some of my blood. And so she ends up killing animal blood, giving it to V, and she sells this to other undeads in the area, because apparently Chicago has a lot of it in this world. And she gives it in little juice boxes, so you can't tell that it's blood essentially, and helps V tame her feeding frenzy and help her get used to regular daily life as an undead. And introduces her to like basically an AA group, but like a monster group for monsters and undead, to just cope and to be good monsters and good undead. And she's one of the people there. She's not the president. That's for Lupo, who's a werewolf. But I'm skimming over the undead group AA meet, because they become important way later, but you really don't get to know the characters that much or the people that much. So I'm just going to skim it to save some time for all of us. But just know that they're there, and they end up helping Vi get used to being a monster, and they become besties, and Isis becomes a bestie and very integral. And that is Vi. Okay. Next up, we are introduced to Myra and Cal. Now, Myra's my girl. Myra, I love her, and we'll get into her later. But I'm going to start off with Cal. So Cal is a demon. And in this world, demons are foot soldiers to the devil, but they're not as like bad as you think. They're a little bit more militarized and a little bit more like factionized than it is just like them being purely tortured. So, essentially, if you are a demon, you're essentially a foot soldier, and your goal is to basically tempt people in the real world, but you also are like physically there. Like you could be physical and not physical. Cal's background and how he ended up becoming a demon is that he lived in a very small village, a very small and poor village, and he had a brother. Now, usually Cal was a very generous and kind individual. He would, Robin Hood a lot of things. He would feed the poor and feed the people around him. And he always dreamed about leaving his village, about seeing a new world, and because he was just always so confined to the small village, he wasn't able to leave. So unfortunately, one fateful day, his brother decides to rob a place. Now, when I said Robin Hood, when it comes to Cal, usually it's just mainly like him donating food, like him helping his village, but his brother was more of the criminal. So his brother ends up robbing this place, and when he robbed this place, he unfortunately ended up dying from it and being sent up to heaven. But before doing so, he ended up killing someone. And that is a big no, 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 no. And so when he gets up to heaven, you actually meet two other characters, which is Gabriel and Raphael. Love them as well. They are the cunty queens. We'll see them later, so I'll explain their backstory later. But Gabriel and Raphael are essentially the ones that assign souls when they get up there to different roles, or assign them to whatever afterlife that they need to reside in. So after going up to heaven, mind you, Cal was like the sweetest person. The only thing he did wrong was accidentally kill someone. He didn't even do it on purpose. But because he still killed someone, that looked bad in his ledger in his book. And if it looks bad in your ledger in your book, then that means you're going to the no-no place. But Gabriel and Raphael were like, instead of sending you to hell, you could be a foot soldier, work off, like, you basically being a worker, you being assigned a role in the afterlife means that you're working off your ledger, so that way you could go to a better place, whether that be heaven or whether that just be ascension, which is nothingness, like you don't reincarnate, you just exist to be. And so Cal is just like, if I'm a demon, does that mean I get to see the world? And then Gabriel Raphael is like, you get to see all of the world. And so that is why Cal is a demon, even though he genuinely is not an evil person. He's a genuinely great person. And he loves this job and he loves being a demon just because he's able to see so much of the world. And when he's in heaven and he looks down at the globe of Earth, he's like, wow, I never knew my village was that small. And so that is Cal. Now, when it comes to Myra, my girl Myra, okay, hold on, I need to get some quotes. But Myra, she was an Egyptian goddess, or she was not a goddess, but she was a queen or a princess that was supposed to be married off. And I can't find the quote right now, but maybe later. But she was sort of supposed to be passed around, marry off into wealth, but she didn't really like that. And she didn't really like messing with men like that. So what she would do is she would use her position of power and privilege to help women learn and read, which was very taboo, but would basically help women read and learn. But aside from helping women advance so that they're not stuck in the same position as she is, which is to just be married off and be an item and tool of leverage, she was very cruel and mean. She would start wars. She would fight people. Like, think of your modern day Cleopatra. That was her. That was Holmes's. And she was laying it every day. And so before she was supposed to get married off, there ended up being like this massive war that she did not start. And instead of saving herself, which she could have done, she decided to save a whole bunch of people before she died in like this tragedy. I think it was a natural event, actually, like a volcano or something. But anywho's, she ends up dying. Excuse me. And because of this, she was supposed to be in like the naughty place because of all the bad things that she did. But because she ended up saving a whole bunch of people before she died, she ends up being put in the good path and in the heaven path. And so she's like, no, I don't believe in this, actually. I don't believe in this afterlife, and I don't believe in you two. I genuinely don't even believe in a God. And just finding out that there is one and finding out that he put me in the position that I was in, I don't like. So you could send me to hell. And they're like, well, we can't do that. You're supposed to go to heaven. You're supposed to be a heaven-bound girly. And she's like, well, I don't want to, what do I need to do to just not exist anymore and just not reincarnate? Because I don't want your fluffy heaven. I don't want to go to hell, but I will if I have to, but you're not going to send me there. What do I need to do? Because you're making this process hard. And so, again, iconic behavior. Myra is going up against the two head angels and arguing back and forth with them. And they end up coming to an agreement where she is serving as an angel and working as an angel, so that way she could get extra brownie points on her ledger, so that way she can reach ascension, so that way she could just not exist. And so by being an angel, she ends up becoming, because she was a guardian angel for someone, she ends up becoming Fox's guardian angel. And so that's why she relates to the story. So she is Fox's designated guardian angel, trying to get Fox to do the right thing. And remember, Fox is low-key immortal, but not really. He's still immortal. So he's been racking up and doing a lot of like bad stuff, which is like having sex with women after they just tell you that their husband died and not telling them the truth. And so she's basically supposed to be his moral compass to get him to do the right thing, and to help his ledger get better. And so she's supposed to be there. But what I love about Myra is that like she's not moral, and she's sort of like, do what you want, I'm just doing this as a job, I'm just doing this as a gig, girly, do what you want. And I love her for that. She's iconic. Don't mess with my girl Myra, because she's ready to beat you down with her wings in a second, and I love that. And so Cal is also important, because Cal ends up becoming besties with Fox and ends up sort of being assigned to protect Fox as well in a way. But really, after meeting Fox, he met Myra. And so Cal and Myra have this will they won't they situation, and it's really cute and it's really sweet. And Cal just tends to visit Fox specifically so that way he can reach Myra, because Fox has a way to get Myra to like come down and like physically be there, versus than just whispering in his ear. And so that is Fox, Cal, and Myra in their relation to everything. Now, I know what you're thinking, Tiana, when do we get to the part where Vi is trying to sell a haunted house? Well, it comes now. So now we're following Vi, where she first comes into this house. She works for a realtor company, and this she was specifically chosen from the realtor company to represent this house and to get this manor sold. Now, the history of this manor is that this manor belonged to Thomas Henry Parker the first. Okay? Thomas Henry Parker the first, or the second, but Thomas Edward Parker the first was a man that just came out from war, and he had a little farm. He just got married to his wife or whatever. And what he decided to do is he decided to make basically the first marketplace for like he invented some sort of food or whatever. And so, yeah, he made his own grocery store. There we go. And so what he did is he was like, okay, I'll sell my extra stuff and like sell the preserves and stuff like that. And that became like a big thing. So Thomas Edward Parker was poor in the beginning and then became a businessman and started selling. His son ended up taking the business, making it even crazier and better. Thomas Edward III, which is Thomas Edward IV's father, by that point, he was just already well known as like wealthy. So we go from like small everyday man ends up becoming to getting a lot of money, was well known and well liked in the community, to Thomas Edward II, who took up the mantle, was still well liked, but he was starting to move more shady businesses. Thomas Edward III, when he took over, it was just a conglomerate. It was just a whole thing. Think of like a Walmart, a Target, like just a chain thing, and it was a lot more soulless, heartless. So that way, by Thomas Edward Parker IV came around, he was basically like what you would assume as an influencer, like a Nepo baby, if you will. Like, he's already in wealth. He has no connection to his previous ancestors, and he's just rich, and life is just his. So one thing to note about Thomas Edward Parker's bloodline is that Thomas Edward Parker the first died mysteriously, and then the second one died mysteriously, and then the third one died mysteriously. And so the fourth one, the way that he ends up dying is he ends up dying in this mansion. And mind you, this mansion that he's in, or this manor that he's in, he does not visit often, but he was there because he was trying to meet his little boo stank. And next thing he knows, he's knocked out dead. He rises as a ghost. He's possessed and haunting the house, and he has no memory of how he died or what happened. All he knows is that his body was just bloody, and he has like the bloody spot of where he was stabbed. And so he decides to haunt the manor because he doesn't want anyone living in it, because he hated the place, and if he hates the place, then no one should love the place, essentially. And so when Vi comes in, she's able to see him because all undeads or immortal creatures are able to see the undead and immortal creatures. So as no one's able to see him as a ghost, and he does all this petty stuff to sort of basically be seen, like he'll throw things or he'll turn off the electrical unit or AC, but it's just like, cool, and this house is haunted. Are you gonna keep doing that? And he's just like, you could see me. And so they end up becoming like little frenemies, because she's still trying to sell the house. He doesn't want the house sold, but also he's sort of purposefully making sure the house doesn't sell so that way he could keep seeing Vi, because Vi's the only one that could see him. And if the house gets sold to someone that's not an undead, then he's just gonna be a nobody again, and he's not gonna see Vi. So that's sort of their relationship. At first it becomes a little bit friendly, but now it's getting old because Vi is just like, I can't sell this house and I'm gonna be stuck at this house until I sell it. I'm not able to go someplace else. But also if I get this money, then I could relax a little bit and not have to be like such a avid realtor. And so after all of that's being said and done, she decides to go to Isis. Remember bestie Isis? Excuse me. And she is like, yeah, I got a ghost problem. And so Isis is just like, ooh, a ghost problem? Well, I know what we should do. We should go to Bucktown because I know someone, his name is Fox. He's supposed to be the godson of death. He could help our spirit problem. He could probably figure out how he died. And then once he figure out how he died, he could just like ascend on and move on and not be a ghost anymore, or just go to heaven. And that's how Fox comes into play. So now the next part is, where do we go from here? Which is where the fun begins. Okay, so now at this point, we have now had Death, we have now had Viola, Isis, we have Thomas Edward Parker IV, who can't leave the house, by the way, as well. He can't leave the house. That's another big thing. He's stuck at the house. Fox, Myra, and Cal. Gabriel and Raphael are the angels, but so far this is like the cast of motley crew that we have, right? And Vi. So Vi and Isis decide to go over to Fox's place to get a reading. Now, as soon as Fox sees them, he's like, you guys are undead. I could tell that you guys are undead. So I don't work with the undeads. I don't work with the likes of you guys. So you guys need to skedaddle. But Isis ends up weaseling her way through and end up getting Vi in there as well. And they also see Cal and Myra there. Now, Cal and Myra were just there to have their little meet cute or whatever, because another thing is it's very taboo for an angel and demon to be together. And so Vi is just like, hey, do you mind helping me with my spirit problem? Now, another thing to know about Isis, we won't figure out Isis's background until much later in the story, but just know as the type of demon that she is very different from the type of demon that Cal is. Cal, needs to drink blood and feast on certain things to stay alive as a demon, but Isis doesn't need that. Isis feeds off of emotions, specifically like emotions of sadness, anger, like all negative emotions. That's what she lives off of. So she is essentially mind reading, and she's not able to like see exactly who's in a person's mind or see what's going on, but she can see the context. So she's just like, while Vi is trying to ask Fox for help about the spirit situation to help Thomas Edward Parker IV ascend and move on, Isis is just like, ooh, is the reason why you don't mess with demons is because of someone? I'm sensing there's someone that broke your heart. Is that the person that gave you this watch? Now, another thing that Fox always has on him is a ring and this watch. This watch is important. It'll come back later. And so Fox's buttons are being pushed, and eventually Myra convinces Fox to go and help Vi, because this is now another reason why Myra and Cal can meet up and be together and have this little meet cute. So Fox is fine, I will be there. I will be square. I will help you guys out if that's what you guys want. Just please leave my house. I'll meet you tomorrow, right? So the plan is, after meeting up, they're going to meet the next day at night. Now, the next day, unintentionally, there comes a buyer, and this buyer's name is Brant. Okay, Brant comes in and he's just like, ooh, this is a lovely house. Now, why Vi is like walking around and stuff, the ghost is essentially like negging Brant, and at first it seems like Brant doesn't know what's going on or doesn't see that this place is haunted. But at the end, Brant is like, are you just gonna keep bothering me? Like, I could see you, you know? And he's like, you could see me? He was like, yeah, I could see you. I'm still interested in this house, so I hope that I could talk more about it later. So Vi is sort of like, well, if this doesn't, like, if Fox isn't able to, like, exercise you essentially and let you move on and tell you what happened, then I guess maybe we could sell this off to Brant and now you have a buddy that could see you and acknowledge you, right? So after that, uh, Brant ends up breaking into the place. Now, Brant breaks in, and Thomas Edward is like, I knew there was something shady about you. You were little shady boots. There was something off with you. And Brant was just like, well, I'm just only stealing something that belongs to me. And honestly, when you think about it, if you find out, like, if people find out that this house was broken into, it'll make it seem like it's a bad place to move into. And then you could still have Vi, like, be here and bug you. And so Thomas was just like, type shit. I'm going to let you break in tonight. There's going to be like a little seance thing going on, but don't worry, I got you. I'll open up the back door for you. You can sneak in, get whatever you need. Cool. So that's the plan. Now, rewind to Thomas Edward Parker IV. Before the official seance happens, Vi is just like, do you remember anything, like, before you died? And so we find out more about Thomas. Now, Thomas was with this girl. He had like an on again, off again relationship, very toxic. Anytime that they met, she ended up stealing something from him. At first, they were in an arranged marriage, and he didn't really like her because he was dull, not his type of girl. Like, he was living the rich, fast life, if you will. So he was just like, she seemed too quiet, too shy. She wasn't cute. She wasn't sexy. But then later down the road, when we got married and whatever, she started being more like vicarious and fun, and I just wanted her. It was giving Dom vibes. It was giving mommy Dom vibes from her, and he loved it. And you know what? Honestly, good for them. Whatever is cool and consensual in their house is great. But anytime he would like meet up with her and like they would do their thing, their thug bizzle, she would steal something, or they would do something that would be like really trouble inducing. And so the last time they met, he was just like, I don't really feel like meeting up with you anymore. And this is like their umpteenth breakup, right? But he was like, I'm serious this time. Like, I hate that you use me to like steal and rob from people or like commit crimes, and then I have to dig you out of it. And so he's like, yeah, then after that, next thing I know, I was supposed to meet up with her one last time because she said that she wanted to say something to me. And then I'm dead. And so Vi was just like, so do you think that this girl might have killed you? And he was like, absolutely not, because she wouldn't kill me. Because if she killed me, then why wasn't she at my funeral? And so Vi is just like, I'm gonna hold your hand when I tell you this, but I think that your girl killed you. I think she killed you and then she robbed you. That's what I personally think. He was like, no. Because if she killed me, she would have at least shown up to the funeral. Like, what I found out after I died was that not only did she not show up to the funeral, but then she just took all of my money and just disappeared and vanished. And that's not like her at all. She would have been there. Right. Delusional. So again, fast forward, Vi is sort of hoping that like when Fox says like, hey, this is how you died, that there is some loving and care and attention to it. And we now get to the big blow up seance part. So now, this is the moment of truth. This is when things start twisting and turning. We have Vi, we have Isis, we have Tom Edward Parker IV. You have to say his full name, he's going to get upset if you don't. We have Myra, we have Cal, and we finally have Fox. Now, when Fox comes in, remember the one key thing. He is still very much so mortal. He is not an immortal. Even though he is the godson of death, he does not get any special powers and privileges. So when he walks in, he tries to act and see, like, try to act like he can see Thomas Edward Parker IV, but he can't. And so that becomes very apparent, and Vi's just like, oh, you're a hack. Oh, you can't really, oh, you're not, So then what was the point of all of this hoopla? But then Fox was just like, don't worry, I could still do it. I'm just going to call my daddy dearest real fast, whatever. And there's a lot of comedy ensued with this, everyone meeting each other. And it's funny because there's a moment when everyone realizes that Fox can't see Thomas. And so we see it like it's written from Fox's perspective, and you just hear conversations without Thomas responding, and you just hear the response. So like if Thomas is saying like the weather is great today, instead of hearing the weather is great today, you'll just hear Vi randomly say like great, right? Like, and so after everyone catches on that Fox can't see Thomas and hear him, Cal starts like translating for Fox, and it becomes super funny and comical because it's like, not now, Cal. Like, I could understand when things are going around me, and it's a very comical moment. But they finally calm down. They finally finish their chitters and their chatters. And so as soon as Fox is just like, all right, let's get this thing together, he twists his ring and he's like, come on, Dad. Father? Death does not show up. Death does not come coming or knocking. And so he's just like, ooh, what is going on? And so everyone's basically in this case of like, so you're not only a hack, but you're a liar too. I bet you're not really even the godson of death. He's like, no. Something is very clearly wrong. My father is supposed to come and he's not here. So there is something very clearly going on. And while all this pandemonium and stuff happens, remember, Brant is still robbing the house. So he starts to sneak out and then he makes a loud thud. Everyone turns around and see Brant. And then Fox sees Brant. And Fox is just like, Brant? And Brant is just like, Fox, girl. The gasps that I gasp. Like and when we get into it, we're going to get into it. And I promise you it's going to be great. So now, after we have been introduced to everyone, now we get a little bit of a background and tidbit on Brant and why this becomes a big thing, which honestly is where most of the romance comes into play. But it's like, it's so good. It's so juicy. So the background of Brant is that he is a demigod, okay? He is a demigod and he is a Norse god. So he's like the son of the Norse version of Zeus. I'm forgetting, not Thor. Anyway, whatever the Norse version of Zeus is, he's the demigod of that. And so he doesn't really like that he's not immortal and that he's not like invited to the cool Norse parties with his god side. And so he decides to challenge death at a game. This is where the Masters of Death, and this is where like the big plot twist, the big chunk of the rest of the book comes into play. So afterlife is very boring. Being a god or a sort of god, right? Like an angel or a demon or like someone that's officially in the afterlife. These are the immortals. This is who we would consider immortals versus the undead who aren't immortals, but are really hard to kill off. And so they live for a very long time, but they still do have a time note, right? So the immortals get really bored up there, girly. It's hard being gods and goddesses of different sex and natures. And so Death ended up making a game. And so this is a very big game, and I'll reveal more about what this game is later because I want you to have the same reveal that I did reading it. But just know that Death has basically like, think of it like a casino, and one of the main things at this casino is Death's game. One thing to note about it is that Death always wins. Your goal is to not lose because Death will always win. That is your goal. That is the whole thing. The whole thing is to not lose. If you lose, then you double lose. But if you win, you can ask for whatever you want. But just know, since Death still wins, he gets to add a condition to whatever your win is. But this is something that all the gods gamble and do because it's fun and it makes their days go by faster. And it's addicting, right? It's an addicting game. That's also something to know. And so Brant ends up finding a way to get to the tables. And so he ends up getting to Death's house, trying to find out where Death is. And in the process of doing so, met a college-y aged a Fox. Like, he's young, but like Death still treated him as a kid. That's why he was still chilling at Death's house instead of like out and about, because he's like in his 20s or so. And so Brant ends up asking Fox for help. Fox ends up showing him where this death casino is. And essentially they have like this, he has like this distance of him because he's just like, all right, kid, I just want to meet your father. And so when Death finds out that Fox knows where the casinos and stuff are, Death gets really upset, kicks him out, tells Fox that he's not allowed back there. But Brant does end up getting an audience with Death. Now, in the future, we learn that he has won. And what he won is immortality, but it was to find out where the immortality apples are. This is something that the Norse gods eat to stay immortal, and it is ran by Idun. And Idun is a woman that is like basically trapped to guard and bless the apples to be immortal, but she's not allowed to leave because if she leaves, then everyone dies essentially. So she's just trapped there. So, one of the things you have to wager, right? So one of the things that was wagered was love, essentially. That was Death's condition. He was like, okay, I'll give you the location of where Eden is so that way you could be an immortal, but it comes at a price. It comes at the price of you never being able to tell the truth. You're not allowed to say the truth. Like, you cannot, if something is true, you cannot say it out of your mouth, right? And so Brand is like, oh, I lie all the time, so this doesn't really matter to me. This is a done deal. But it comes back to bite him in the future. Now, what he does when he meets Eden is he ends up having a trade with Eden. Eden's thing is just like, for every time you come here and I give you apples to stay alive and to stay immortal, I want a story. I want to hear about what's going on in the real world, and you're going to tell me, essentially, and that's the trade. But when he gets involved with Fox and they start having this steamy romance and they start getting together close and hot and heavy, Eden basically forces Brant to be with Fox because she likes the tea and drama, and honestly, who wouldn't? But it starts getting really bad because Brant is starting to catch feelings for Fox. And that was one of the things he told Death, where he's like, I don't love anyone. I don't have anyone. And that's another thing about the game. Like, you only win if you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So he didn't really love or care about anyone but himself. So now this is really bad because now he's actually starting to fall in love with Fox and they're having their little romance. And Fox sort of knows how he's getting the apples at one point, and that was something that Brant was hiding. But Fox is just like, you know, if you fuck her, I don't care, as long as you don't love her, because I know what you're doing. And so when Brant tells this to Eden, he's just like, you know, I could actually see my future with him if it wasn't for you, essentially. Eden was just like, oh, you think that you're gonna actually be with him? You know what? You don't have to come here anymore. You are released from your servitude of sleeping with me and telling me stories. You can have all the apples that you want. Honestly, here you go. This should last you for however long you need. And so Brant is just like, is this a trick? Is this a trial? He's just like, no, I know you're going to be back because you're addicted to the game. And you're going to go back to that game. And when you do, you're going to gamble and you're going to lose. And then you're going to come crying to me. This is the nicest thing I could do for you, actually, so you can enjoy your fleeting moment with Fox. Now, Brant did not listen to this warning, nor did he listen to this heated warning. And so he goes to Fox. Now, remember what I said in the beginning. Brant cannot tell truths, especially he cannot tell truths to the person that he loves or turns into love. So anytime Fox asks him, like, do you love me? Do you want to be with me? He can't say it. And so from Fox's perspective, he's just being used and abused and lied to, and eventually becomes a strain in their relationship when they eventually do get together. So, before Brant leaves to challenge Death again at the table and at the games, he decides to give Fox a watch. Now, this watch is a watch of immortality. It's something that he stole from Death's house because, again, he's also a thief and a crook. So he gives Fox a watch, but he also gives Fox a ring because while they were together and messing around, Fox really wasn't talking with his dad like that, and he was just like, you should probably talk to your dad because it's been a while, and he low-key really loves you and you should have a relationship with him. So he gives him a ring that will like basically summon Death, and that's why Fox has this watch and this ring specifically. Now he just leaves. He goes ghost for 200 years, and Fox has never seen him. So when we fast forward to beginning, or like to when everything is going wrong and Death is missing, Fox is like, "You're here?" And Brant is just like, "You could see me?" And that's sort of where we leave off with that cliffhanger, and we're gonna come back to that later. But that's basically Brant's backstory. Okay, so after that whole shebang bang, right, we're back where they're like shocked to see each other. They're going at it. Everyone's confused. And now people are like, what is going on and where is Death? So Brant is just like, something must be absolutely wrong if I'm able to see you, because I shouldn't be able to see you, but I can't explain why I can't see you. So Death must be missing. And so now this turns into a whodunit, and we have to try to find Death. Now, luckily, by this time, Raphael and Gabriel come in. Yes, they are important to the plot as well. So Raphael and Gabriel, they're just chilling up in heaven, and ledgers are very important. But one big important thing is the ledger of people who played Death's game. Now, it's important because Death has always kept a ledger of Death's game, of his game, but also who has won and who has lost. It is something that is written and something that is sacred. If this ledger gets out to God and Satan, who are like the big guy and the big guy, if you will, everyone that's played the game is going to be in trouble, because they're not supposed to do that, and that's going against their job, and that could be a lot of punishment for a lot of people. So this ledger is very important to protect and keep safe. So Gabriel and Raphael are just like, I feel like the ledger is missing. And also, where's Death? Death hasn't been doing his job, and we've been having an overflow of souls that haven't been sent to go where they're going. And so, out of nowhere, Volos showed up. Now, Volos is... Hold on, I need to look at my look. Volos is the god of vice, okay? And so, Volos is the god of vice, and out of everybody, the rule tended to be who could play anyone can play the game of Death with the game that Death has made, but Volos and humans. Now, the reason why humans couldn't play is because Death thought that humans couldn't win. And so technically Brant isn't a human or a mortal, he's a demigod, but that still counted. But he was able to get through because basically Fox helped Brant even figure out where the place was, so Death was like, sure, whatever. But the reason why Volos can't win is because if Volos plays, he does not play fair, and also he's just too chaotic to play. And so Volos didn't like that he couldn't play with the big guys, and so he hatched this big scheme to basically get a heist to steal the ledger. After stealing the ledger, hold Death hostage because he's the one with the ledger, and basically force Death to play the game with him so that he could basically become Death, which is why no one wanted Volos to play in the first place, because he just cheats. And also the reason why he would want to play the game is because he just wants to be the master of Death and everything, right? So I know what you're thinking, Tiana, how would he have the ledger if this is something that Death keeps on him personally? How would he kidnap Death? Well, Brant also isn't the brightest character, and so Brant decided to make a copy, an exact replica copy of Death's ledger, because he was going to use that as leverage to challenge Death a third time. Yes, you're hearing that right, a third time. I know the last time I said he was going back to challenge him and then he went vanish, but he lost the second time. And the reason why it's important that Brant is able to see Fox now is because Brant gambled Fox for this game, and he lost. So because he lost, not only is he not able to be with Fox because Death didn't like Brant with his godson, he just didn't approve of that relationship, but also now because he lost, Brant was always with Fox. Like, Brant was there following him and trying to be with him, but Fox literally could not see or hear him at all. So it's really sad because like Brant has always loved Fox, but Fox doesn't know that he was always there with him. But also, right on Fox makes good sense on why he's mad, because it's like, why would you even gamble me? What was so, like, from Fox's perspective, he thinks the game is stupid, but also it's like, what was so important to you that you would gamble me? And he didn't understand. And remind you, Brant can't tell him what he gambled the first time, which is that he was lying. And so the reason why Brant went the second time was because Brant wanted to regain his ability to tell the truth so that way he could tell Fox truthfully how he felt and live a true life because he actually loved Fox. So anyway, Brant is just like, ooh, or Gabriel and Raphael are like, ooh, Volo, what are you doing here? And Volo's like, oh, nothing. I just have this. So I'm allowed to play the games now, right? And they're like, you should not have that. And he's like, well, I do. So we're going to play. And when you all lose and I become the master of death, then things are going to change around here. And so Gabriel and Raphael were just like, well, what if we play, like, because Volos is unhinged, right? So Loki wants to play the game, but he's like, Volos, I don't think it's fair if you play the game with all of us. Obviously, you're going to win and it's not going to be fun. Maybe you should play a game with someone who's a bit of a wild card, someone that you wouldn't expect. Someone that you wouldn't expect, right? So basically, Gabriel and Raphael just voluntold Fox to play and beat Volos at the game, which, mind you, Fox has knowledge of, but he doesn't know what the game is, and no one has explained it. Not even me. I'm still waiting for that reveal. And so, as everyone is very confused and perplexed on where on where death is, Gabriel Raphael just basically volunteered Fox to defeat Volos. And Volos did not have any idea about who Fox was because he was Death's best kept secret. And so Volos was just like, fine, you have this amount of time for this Fox person to come and play. And we're going to have like this big, the game tournament. But I'm going to come out the victor. And when I do, this is what's going to happen. And so he imprisons all of the gods that aren't big dude god and big dude god or demon or devil. And so Raphael and Gabriel come down in that moment to be like, hey, bestie, you need to play Volos in this game. And if you lose, all of humanity and all of goddom will be destroyed. But if you win, then we all get to survive. Yay! And also your father's captured. Ding. So, so now the whole Scooby-Doo and the gang have to deal with this. And it just, it's so funny in between it. But Fox is just like, why do I need to do this? And Gabriel and Raphael are like, if you do it, there'll be some like incentive. But first you need to find your father's ledger. Like you need to find Death's ledger because we know that he has a copy of it. We need to find the main ledger. So Brant was just like, bet, I could help you. I know where I know where Death's house is and I know how to break into it. So now we unintentionally have Vi, Isis, because she's coming along for a ride. Myra, Cal, because they're Fox's guardian angel and demon. And Fox going on this adventure. But I know what you're thinking. Tiana, what happened to Thomas Edward Park IV? Well, after Fox and Myra and Gabriel and Raphael, basically after everyone looked at the contract and seeing like essentially why he's possessed, it turns out that in the contract and in the will of the person that owns the home, it can only be sold off to someone that will use the place as a house. And a lot of the time the people that wanted to purchase this house wanted to purchase it as a museum or anything else. But if it's sold as a house, then that means by some laws and clause that Thomas Edward Parker IV would actually be able to leave the house. Like he wouldn't be gridlocked into the house. So remember the A&A group or the Monsters Anonymous group? Well, they come into play because they end up purchasing the house for like $1 and are like, yeah, we'll just live here. So that way you could go and like help out Vi because it seems like all hands on deck are needed for this tournament for the game because Fox can't be the only person that plays. And so that's how Thomas ends up being able to leave the house. But we will find out more about Elaine, who is his like girlfriend that Loki possibly maybe killed him. And so they end up going to Death's house. When they go to Death's house, You know, they see some memories and stuff. And Fox is very conflicted because he's like, I missed him, but also I'm putting my foot, girl. I'm gonna stand up. Like, I did not deserve this treatment, and you just disappeared and left me, and you're not gonna be able to tell me why. So fast forward, fast forward, fast forward. We get up to the games. Now, there are a couple of plot twists when we get up to this point. One of the big plot twists is that Volos actually planned this. And Brant was working with Volos. And so remember when I said that Brant was looking for something in the house? Well, he was actually looking for the ledger that Volos had. But also, plot twist, he was using that as an excuse. He knew, basically Brant knew everything that was going to happen. Because Volos has like this time thing that he's able to see the future or whatever. And so Brant has been working with Volos this whole time because Brant has been wanting to gamble death again to be able to see Fox, and this is the only way. So basically he betrayed Fox into setting him up essentially to getting the actual ledger because Volos was sort of bluffing and again had the copy and didn't actually have the real ledger. But now Volos has the real ledger, which is actually real world stakes and real world doom. And that becomes like a big plot twist. But another big plot twist is that Elaine did kill Thomas Edward Parker IV. We find out that in rewinding of time, Thomas Edward Parker I was actually not this big country boy saint. He was actually a mean and evil person. He did not want to marry the woman that he was with. He did not want to have kids. And so he decided to make a deal with Volos, which is something that you should never do. But he decided to make a deal with Volos and was just like, I want to be extremely rich. And Volos was just like, cool, you can be extremely rich as long as you give me a sacrifice of someone each time. So he has all this immense wealth, but every amount of time, right? Well, he gets wealth and he lives forever, or he lives for a long time. So, as he's living his life and getting these riches from Volos, he has to like kill someone and sacrifice it to him. And eventually, he doesn't really like doing it. And so he's just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And Volos was just like, okay, cool, but you'll be coming back to me begging for more. And when you come back, the price is going to be higher because you owe me a lot. Until eventually Thomas Edward Parker IV ends up turning sick. Because one thing Volos never mentioned in his immortality is that you're going to age. You're going to age and you're going to feel ailments and stuff of that nature. So Thomas Edward Parker IV goes back to Volos, and Volos is just like, well, no, because now you're coming to me again. The price is higher now. I don't want just any random person as a sacrifice. I want an heir. I want you to, I want the soul of one of your bloodlines. And so the curse that the Tom Edward Parkers had, where like they die in a mysterious way, was actually Thomas Edward Parker I killing them so that he could stay alive. But eventually Thomas Edward Parker IV becomes so old yet still living that Volos ends up taking over his body. And that's something that Volos does. He has like 1,000,001 different masks because he just likes wearing people as meat skins. Ew. But yeah, he just ends up taking over Thomas Edward Parker I. And so technically Thomas Edward Parker IV's great-great-grandfather ended up killing him, but also Elaine ended up killing him as well because Elaine also wanted to challenge again. Elaine, who was the girl who would like steal a rob from him or whatever, essentially she was a mermaid or a siren, if you will. And she wouldn't feel pain, and she wanted to be on the earth, and she ended up making a deal with Volos. Again, a big no-no, and then ends up becoming in servitude of Volos. But she does end up falling in love with Thomas Edward Parker IV, but she had to take over someone else's body to stay in the real world and not be a mermaid again. So she ends up taking over the body of Elaine. So when he first met Elaine, that was the real Elaine. But when he was sleeping around with her and having fun, that was different Elaine. This was Siren Elaine. So there's a whole bunch of twists and turns that happen with that as well. But I'm going to now explain what the games are. Okay, so the game is very simple, actually. The game is You basically like put your hands on this board and you're like taken into the simulation, and each opponent, or you and another opponent, take turns trying to figure out what that person cares about the most, or like what that person's secret is, if you will. And the goal of the game, to basically not lose or to win, if you will, is to not show your true emotion. And that could be from any range of things. Like, you lose as soon as you show true emotion or you care about something. So say, you know, like, say I'm playing with someone, or I'm playing the game with someone, and they're like, you love your dog. I have to say no while looking at my dog and feeling the emotions and being with my dog. So on and so forth, until there's nothing that opponent can say about you to get you to feel that any emotion or to recognize. And it sounds silly, but it's actually really intense when you read it. My words don't express enough how cold and cruel the game is, because it's like, imagine the thing that you care about the most being there, and you're in that setting, you were there, and it's like a realistic simulation, and you essentially telling that person that you don't love them or you don't care about them. And the messed up thing about the game is, the other thing that's messed up about the game as well is, like, you don't know if by you saying you don't care about this person, if they could hear you or not, or that they're there, or that if you win, that now you're not allowed to be with that person. So that's why the game is such an addictive thing for the gods to play, because they get to actually feel human emotions, and they get to actually sort of realize the things that they care about the most, but at the cost of losing. Because again, another thing is, if you lose, you put something up to barter with, like you put something up to gamble with, and so you lose that. So I say that to say, now we're at the tournaments, and so Volos basically locked up everybody and has only allowed Brant, Elaine, and Volos to play in like this tournament bracket style thing. So Thomas Edward Parker IV takes on Elaine, and that's when he finds out the truth, that Elaine killed him because Volos told him to, because Volos is technically taking over the body of Edward Parker I, and he needed the soul of the fourth. And Elaine did it because if she did it, then she would be able to become truly human. And if she did it so that she can also challenge death at the game and become truly human. But also, if Volos wins, then Volos promised that he'll give her whatever she wants. They both end up winning. And the reason that they both end up winning the game is because Elaine basically made him win, because if Elaine didn't win, then Volos was basically going to kill her. And Thomas didn't want that to happen to her, even though, like, low-key, boy, stand up, you got murdered by this woman. But he still wanted to help her because he still had love for her. So they both win. Then Brant and Fox ended up going up against each other. And that's when it's revealed to Fox about what Brant does. Because, mind you, now since they're in the game, he's able to actually talk the truth and say the thing for the game. And so he's able to play back the memories from his perspective of what happened. And Fox is finally able to understand why Brant was doing the things that he did. Now, what I love about Olivia, right, is that at this point, you would think from a writer standpoint, they tend to like, what I love about this book and what I love about this writer is that there are actual consequences for your actions, and she's not willing to save a character just for the sake of saving a character. So what I loved is that usually by this time in this beat, right, a book or a story will be like, and then that's when Fox forgave Brant for everything that he did. But no, Fox stood on business. Fox is like, I get why you did what you did, but you were willing to risk me for that when our relationship was fine before. Yeah, it was a little bit strained, but I understood your love through that. So you basically threw away our relationship for nothing. And essentially caused all of this. Like, you betrayed, like, it became like a big thing. And honestly, good on you, Fox. Good on you, because I would have done the same thing. I would have like elbowed him and everything. But Brant ended up But Brant ends up losing, so that way in the bracketeers or whatever, Volos ends up going up against Fox. Now, Fox ends up winning because he's able to point out to Volos that he cares about his appearance and he cares about winning a game, and that gets into his head, and Volos ends up losing, making Fox the winner and saving the world. But there is one last condition. He does need to go up against Death. Now, when he goes up against Death, Death ends up losing because the only thing that he cares about is Fox, and Fox knows that. And so after winning against Death and becoming the master of Death, if you will, everything somewhat turns back to normal. But now we need to handle the big elephant in the room. We need to handle what happens to Thomas Edward Parker IV, because now he knows what happens to him after death. We need to handle Vi, who was also dealing with whatever. But also, we need to address Isis. Yes, the plot twist about Isis is that Isis ends up also helping Volos win, or not Volos win, ends up helping Fox win because Fox is able to find out his weakness through Isis. Now, Isis is actually Volos's wife. Volos is the god of ice, but the god, like the main god, ended up creating Isis, who's the goddess of virtue, to basically balance out Volos. But Volos ended up overpowering Isis a lot, and so they both basically share the same power, if you will. And so he uses his power to oppress her. And how she ended up coming into the real world is because she made a deal with Volos that Volos won't bother her as long as she never sees him again. Like, as soon as she sees Volos again, she's now tied to be with him forever. And so that's essentially what happened. But Vi ends up going over to where Isis is basically held captive and like caged up. And after Isis tells her, like, yeah, basically I'm his wife, but he has power over me. We share the same power, but he has power over me. And now, since I broke the rule because I saw him again, we are now tied together again. I don't like him. I hate him. And then Vi, being the rational person that she was, like, okay, let me get this straight. You were created to be his wife. And he shares the same power as you, and you share the same power as him. Yes. And he imprisoned you in this cage with his power. Right. And so Vi was just like, so can't you get yourself out of this cage? And she's like, what? She's like, yeah. He's just as powerful as you are, and vice versa. So if he's using his power to cage you, can't you use your power to not be in the cage? And she's like, I never thought of that. He treated me so shitty and horrible that I never thought of escape. And so she basically escapes herself and like breaks out all of the other gods that were caged, goes over to Fox before he goes up against Volos and tells Fox Volos's weakness, ends up winning. And then iconically, Isis turns Volos into a crown and wears him. And she's like, now it's my time to talk. Now it's my time to rule. And I'll let you have your say here and there, but you're not gonna do this again, husband. And I was like, yes, Isis, gather him together. And so yeah, now we're in like the epilogue where you basically find out what happens to everyone. So you find out that when Brant first challenged Death, he actually did wager his truths, and that's why he ended up losing it, because Death always wins, right? Second time he lost, he wagered Fox, and this third time he wagered that Fox would win. And like the reason why Brant even orchestrated all of this with Volos was because he thought that Fox would win and would basically be together with him. But Fox winning and like this aftermath or whatever, Fox was just like, you know what? I want to be mortal with Brant. and we're just gonna live a mortal life and we're gonna die and we're gonna, like, now seeing what the afterlife is, I think that we'll be able to find each other and be together. So their happy ending is that they live a mortal life together. For Isis, again, she has the iconic crown moment and she ends up going back into sort of like the afterlife god, whatever, and ruling that and being the goddess of virtue. Then when it comes to Myra and Cal, I didn't mention them as much. They were helpful, but they didn't play as pivotal of a role when the games started coming into play. You actually find out the reason why they have their will they won't they chemistry is because Myra played the game, which was another plot twist that happened when they were doing the whole game situation. Myra ended up playing the game, and she basically gambled love without knowing that she would fall in love with Cal, and so she lost. And so that's she won, but she lost the ability to be with the one that she loves fully. She could only be with him in like will they won't they moments. So in the aftermath, Gabriel and Raphael actually granted them to be together and like not make it taboo. So like now they're officially together and they could see each other without using Fox, which I thought was also very cute. And Myra decided to stay as an angel and Cal decided to stay as a demon because both of them technically did enough to reach ascension, but they're like, well, we have time then to be together. Well, we could wait for ascension, which is basically nothingness. And then finally, Vi and Thomas. At first, Vi thought that Thomas was just going to choose ascension and just, leave. And Vi had the option to not be a vampire, but she didn't know how to live a life without being one. And so she comes back to the real world thinking that Thomas ended up deciding to move on and dealing with that. But then plot twist, Thomas Edward Parker IV ends up getting a new life basically. So he comes back to life in the human world. He's still immortal. He will still die. But in the meantime, between time, Vi actually turns into a mortal as well. I'm sorry. Vi turns into a mortal. That was her gift for helping out with all of this. And then Thomas Edward Parker gets reincarnated and he comes back to the real world too. And they end up getting together and not just being friends, but being like a little couple, which I thought was really cute. And funnily enough, the Monsters Anonymous, they still end up keeping the house and they still live in this mansion. And yeah, that is the story. I know I talked a lot and I know it's a lot, but I will go to my conclusions. So, if you have made it this far, thank you for listening to all my ribbles and rambles. As you can tell, I'm a little bit sick. And I was really trying to push through this explanation because I've been saying I wanted to talk about this book for so long. And so now I'm talking about it. But this book is so good. And me talking about it doesn't really do the justice of how comedic it is. How the twists and the turns go. Oh my god, the characters, Myra still might go. Honestly, all of the girlies were doing it. And honestly, if the girlies had hair, it would probably be Bob's because they all get it done. And it was so good. So please, please, please check out this book if you can. If not, please check out any Barnes & Noble's recommended or book of the month. They'll have this tag. And if not, you could always go up to the register and be like, hey, I want the Barnes & Noble pick of the month. And there's like a section. But if my ribbles or rambles for however long this video is going to be has not convinced you to read this book or to read more from Olivia, I do plan on making another video talking about some of the other books that I read and more of like a segmented overture, and then I kiki about the different parts. But yeah, thank you for making this far. If you liked what you have heard and watched and seen, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!